Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Sam Vassallo, joined by Benjamin ABELA, and these are today's headlines. The GHARGHUR Women's Club lambasts racist chants during a football match. Meanwhile, a government consultant, Robert Musumeci, is accused of misogyny after comments about the gender quotas bill. A Maltese nurse has become the first to receive the second COVID-19 vaccine dose. And meanwhile, Prime Minister Robert ABELA has called for a discussion on euthanasia and recreational weed. And lastly, Times of Malta officially endorses court action against TV propaganda. Let's get right into it.
So first story of the week. Raiders GFC, a female football club from GHARGHUR, has called out supporters' racist behavior during a match. So this all went down yesterday Sunday, during a match between Raiders GFC and Mosta FC. Now, the player who was on the receiving end of these racist comments was none other than Maya Laferla, who also happened to score the Raiders GFC's winning shot of the match. Of course, the football team, Raiders, took to Facebook to condemn the action, and of course, commenters pledged their support for Maya.
Indeed, unfortunately, this is not the first racist incident. In fact, last year there were two, namely San Juan FC official was sacked for racist comments against a goalkeeper back in June, and there was a feud between a Birkirkara player accusing a Singlia player of racist abuse on the field. Hopefully the Malta Football Association takes action and shows that this kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. On to our next story, shall we? So a government consultant has declared what a woman must be to be a parliamentarian, indeed. So Robert Musumeci, who is a lawyer and architect, said that a woman must be, quote-unquote, charming and unpretentious in order to be an MP. This is within the context of the infamous gender quotas bill, which is currently being tabled in Parliament. Essentially, if 40% of the House of Representatives is less than women, is not women, 12 seats will be added, up to 12 seats for the Nationalist and Labour Party. Now, the reaction was not pleasant. In fact, he was showered with criticism from women and men alike, because unfortunately, we still need to say this in 2021, but you need to be a little more than just likable to be an adequate politician. And, where does intelligence come into this? There are so many more qualities that women are and need to be in order to be adequate in Parliament.
Of course, amongst the people who lambasted Robert Musumeci, we had young PN activist Eve Borg Bonello, who passive-aggressively changed her Facebook bio to Bla Pretensionijiet. Of course, we also had the Vice President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, calling Musumeci out in a very strong-worded status. And we also had a number of other activists. We had people like Wayne Flask from Movement Graffiti, for example, calling out Musumeci. So yes, it's safe to say that Musumeci's status was not well received.
In other words, you bite us, we bite back, Robert.
And with that, let's move on to the third story of the day. A Maltese nurse has become the first to receive the second COVID-19 dose. So I think we can all remember Rachel Gregg, that infectious disease unit nurse who just a few weeks back received the first COVID-19 vaccine in Malta. Well, only yesterday, Greg became the first woman in Malta, the first person in Malta, to receive the second dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. In pictures uploaded to Facebook by the Facebook page Saha, Greg could be seen smiling behind her mask as she held her arm tight after being vaccinated. Now, having said that, Greg surely won't be the last to receive the second dose of her COVID-19 vaccine, as Malta's inoculation program is well underway, with at least 13,000 people to have been vaccinated in the coming days.
Indeed, so that's around 2.57% of the Maltese population. And just to give you a rundown of the latest COVID-19 stats, there were 141 new cases registered yesterday, together with 133 recoveries, and unfortunately, our death toll has gone up to 239. So condolences to all the families affected. On to our next story. Our Prime Minister Robert ABELA has called for a mature discussion on euthanasia and recreational weed. So Prime Minister ABELA has echoed sentiments from the Deputy Labour leader Daniel McAuliffe, who called for this mature discussion on euthanasia after McAuliffe saw his father battle a serious illness before dying. Now, just so you know, assisted dying is completely illegal in Malta. And we've spoken to some euthanasia activists in Malta, and hopefully we can get the ball rolling on having a good discussion on this and why it's needed in Malta. Now, he also spoke about recreational weed, which would mean that if this was legalized, the amount of weed a person can carry on their body would increase. Which I think, it's well due that we have the discussion. There are around 40,000 cannabis users in Malta. So these are some of the progressive reforms that are currently being tabled by Labour.
Of course, we hope that we actually see some of these proposals come to fruition, and we hope they're not just being brought up for political points. And with that, we move on to the last story of the day. Times of Malta endorses court action against TV propaganda. So, newspaper Times of Malta has become the first newspaper to openly support Lovin Malta's court action against TV propaganda. Now, to give you a bit of a recap of what this court action is all about. So Lovin Malta is looking into how the Constitution demands that the Broadcasting Authority ensures due impartiality in matters of political or industrial controversy, something which we're not necessarily getting through political party-owned TV stations, One and Net. The article in question even specifies that this function shall be without prejudice to such other functions and duties as may be conferred upon it by any law for the time being in force in Malta. Now, earlier this month, just a few weeks back, Lovin Malta gave formal notice of its intention to contest the section in the Broadcasting Act that allows the broadcasting watchdog to close a blind eye to TV stations owned by political parties. Now, we realize that it might seem a bit overwhelming to wrap your head around this, and that's why we came up with something completely new to make this a bit more digestible.
Exactly. So just to clarify even more, Lovin Malta is not advocating for the shutdown of One and Net News. We just argue that we are against basically TV propaganda. So they can exist, but not to spew such biased reporting. So we are essentially arguing that the Broadcasting Authority reforms itself out of the clutches of political parties and start properly enforcing the Constitution. Now, if you want to learn a bit more about this, go ahead and go to kashaturi.com, and you'll find very essential, perfect explanations of what Lovin Malta is trying to do with this court case. So that's all from us here at Lovin Malta, and have a day full of lovin'.